Turn with me to Nehemiah 1. Michael preached on it last week. I didn't think he did a good job, so I'm going to go ahead and fix it. We're actually going after the same passage, two different kind of angles towards it. But again, I said this in the prayer, another week, another tragedy. How many in here are tired of seeing this on the news? We're tired of hearing thing after thing and the weight of it and the pain of it and just the struggle in our world, which is one thing after another. And we see it, and if you're like me, I become a news junkie. I'm reading every article. I'm watching on the news channels, and I'm jumping around. And then 2 days later, and oh yeah, I forgot, it's now hockey, and it's gone. I mean, it weighed heavily on me for that, few hours. And I feel like, man, something's got to change. And I even may have thrown up a few prayers. But then I get busy, my kids need me, I need to drive and do something. And it's fascinating how quickly I can move away from any tragedy, any story, any fact, and I move right back into my normal everyday rhythm life, and I kind of move past anything that I once felt may compel me to move. So today what I want to unpack is, what is it inside of me that either moves me to be a change agent or moves me to sit it out? What is it when we look at this story of Nehemiah that moves him to do something, to make a difference when he heard facts and he heard a story and he saw the CNN news, breaking news thing hit him? What moved him to make a change instead of do what I do and just take a few steps back? And I enjoy getting really motivated to do something and doing nothing, right? I have been deeply motivated to do a lot, and I've done very little. I wish Jesus would go, I'm so glad you were motivated. Welcome in, good and faithful motivated person. Like, instead of you made change, you made a difference, you stepped out. I think I'm more blown away. I'm thinking about a guy that I played hockey with in high school that when he graduated, got into the military, served 2 years in Korea, and then came back and was actually kind of on a leave whenever the war in Afghanistan kicked up. And he went to his mom and dad and said, I'm gonna go back to it. And they said, don't do it. And he said, I'm gonna do it because if I don't go, there may have to be a dad with kids or somebody with a wife. I'm gonna step out. And he got killed. And you just look at it, what is it inside of him that motivated? Because I would have gone, man, I fought faithfully for 2 years. It's my time to sit back and rest. What moves you into getting involved into the mission of what God's doing? What moves us to do this? I think our normal responses are this. The first one, we're shocked and initially saddened, but quickly forgotten, right? We're shocked, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. We should pray for it. Let's bring the kids in. And then it's the next morning, and it's like, okay, guys, go get ready. We're going out to Wet and Wild. We're going out, that shows my age, Hurricane Harbor. We're going all of these different things. It's just, let's go do something else. Let's get my mind off of it. The second one, I believe and trust others will do something. Like, there's people that are paid to do that stuff. The third one is we get active in the wrong way, right? We actually start doing something. In Dallas, there was this area of strip clubs that this one Christian businessman really wanted to get rid of, right? And it's all a good cause. Let's get these strip clubs, let's get all of this out of our city. And so what he started doing is really putting in money and fighting and pushing hard into changing the zoning and the legislation for this area. And he achieved it. Right? He changed that whole neighborhood because they all just moved out and went other places. So what he did was did a great dispersal project. We don't want them all together. Let's just get them in other areas because people there's still sin. There's people that desire that. There's still people that want that. So he didn't actually eradicate the problem. He just dispersed it. And I feel like sometimes we get involved, but we get involved in the wrong things. We fight the wrong cause. We fight the wrong battle. The fourth one, we have a quick, short investment into the cause. So we go, I'm going to do this. I even maybe give money through text. I may even go out and do something inside. So we hear about a massive tragedy with Katrina, and so I'm going to go do it. So I go invest a weekend, and I go and I serve, and then I go back home. And it was a good investment, but it didn't really change much. It was short-lived. And then the last one, and this is what I'm pleading for us to become people of, and I'm pleading for myself to become this, is commitment for the long fight to make a change. Commitment to the long fight to make a change. We're in a series called Called to Lead. And it really is, if you are a believer in Jesus, that you are called to lead. Whether that's lead your wife, whether that's lead your kids, whether that's lead your community, whether that's lead to your company. You're supposed to lead the school you're in. You're supposed to lead the friends you're around. You're supposed to lead a movement. Whatever it is, you are called to lead. Jesus calls us to step up and to be change agents. And so when we look at this story, we want to see what is it in us. Nehemiah 1. Nehemiah 1:1, we're going to start there. If you're looking for Nehemiah, it's Ezra and Nehemiah. And so you'll actually go, it's about halfway in between Genesis and Psalms. If you want to go to the middle of the New Testament and then go another middle, basically. In Nehemiah 1, or just look it up on your phone, way easier. Nehemiah 1:1. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. Now it happened in the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, as I was in Susa, the capital, that Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah. And I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, its gates are destroyed by fire. So what is this? This is the breaking news headline, right? They're sitting, he sees the breaking news headline, he sees the problem, he sees the issue. Now what does he do? Verse 4, as soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. And I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. That's some big stuff in light of this week, right? The CNN News hits, I read it, and this is what I did. I sat, I wept for days. People were asking me what's wrong, and I went, man, another one? Okay, guys, get in the car. We got to go to McDonald's. I don't do this stuff. I don't move into this stuff. So before we go, hey, that was way over in Manchester. We live here. This wasn't actually in his town either. It was 800 miles away. Before social media, before any visual pictures, before any videos of anything, before any of that. So who is this Nehemiah? What caused him to move? What was his job? I think all of that's really important. So we realize that Nehemiah was a cupbearer. You know what that is? He sat next to the king and he tasted and tested wine. Made sure that it was good wine for the king and also made sure that it wasn't going to kill the king. So the king's like, you try it. You're my best friend. You try it. He's doing okay. We'll try that now. Like, that's really his job. His job was to test out wine and make sure it wasn't poisonous. Somebody wasn't trying to kill the king. His job was to be kind of alongside of the king, be a friend of the king. And then we also see that he wasn't right there. He was a layman who lived 800 miles away from the falling of the Jerusalem wall, from the breaking down of what was happening. 800 miles away. In a non-media, non-video world, he hears this, and what is his response? Massive brokenness. Verse 2, I even love this. Nehemiah showed interest. He asked them. Go back to verse 2. Then Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. He actually asked more questions. We're going to get that to a minute, but I love the fact that he didn't just go, oh man, that sounds bad. He pled for it. He dug into it. He wanted to know what exactly is going on. I'm going to hit this here in a little bit again, but we are a headline YouTube video junkie world, right? You can get anybody to believe anything by shooting a headline and showing a video. You have people going, did you know that a squirrel did, where'd that come from? Headline, video, that's all you needed. And people believe whatever it is. Doesn't even have to be true. Just headline and video. He plugged in deeper and looked for the story. He wanted to know the story, what is going on. Verse 4. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. What are the three things he did? I sat down. He stopped. He just stopped. He stopped his world. He stopped any more noise coming in. He stopped anybody asking him questions. He just stopped. And then he wept. There was a physical outpouring of brokenness. There was he allowed himself space and room to weep for days. For days. I continued fasting and praying. So he didn't move past it quickly. He sat in it. I'm sure there were a lot of things for him to do, right? I'm sure he was busy. I'm sure he had responsibilities. I'm sure but he sat down and wept and mourned because it was important to him. This isn't just him. Turn with me over to Ezra 9. One book back, Ezra 9, it's probably 1 or 2 pages back. Ezra 9, 4 and 5. Now, Ezra and Nehemiah used to, in the early days, Ezra and Nehemiah were one book because they're so similar in how they talk that they were actually one book, and then they separated them just for clarity reasons. But Ezra 9, 4 through 5, Ezra does the same thing. Then all who trembled at the words of the God of Israel because of the faithlessness of the returned exiles gathered around me while I sat appalled until the evening sacrifice. And at the evening sacrifice, I rose from my fasting with my garment and my cloak torn and fell upon my knees, spread out my hands to the Lord my God, saying, "Oh my God," and he began to pray. We see that this is this story of what it looks like to sit and not move past something that actually breaks us. I believe that this is one of the big issues in our cities and in our world is we're not broken by near enough stuff. That hardness, that brokenness, that sadness doesn't actually move. We try to move past it because we don't want to sit in it long enough. We just want to move forward. These are things that we mistaken for brokenness, things that we mistaken or things that we excuse or things that we replace for brokenness. The first one is anger or frustration. Sometimes I think we mistaken brokenness with anger and frustration. We get mad at a situation. We get mad at somebody. We get mad at the situation the world's in. And it makes us angry and it makes us just very, very, very visibly frustrated inside. But it's not broken. I get mad at a lot of things, but it doesn't break me. And I think I almost excuse it for it a lot, right? I think I like to get mad at things, but I don't actually like to get good because broken's a deeper, more sorrowful, action-filled response. The second thing, I think we replace it for annoyance. I get annoyed at something and then think I need to act on it. I get annoyed at maybe how a teacher's maybe responding to a kid, or I get annoyed at how my neighborhood's starting to be a certain way, or I start getting annoyed at X, and so I start acting on it, but I'm annoyed by it. I'm not broken for it. We're going to talk about why that matters here in just a little bit. The third thing is sadness. We get sad about it. I mean, it really does make me hurt a little bit inside. It really does make me kind of break a little bit inside, but it doesn't move me to the point of actually doing anything about it. I sit and I'm sad and I'm upset. It's also amazing how many things I can allow myself to get sad about and not broken. The fourth thing is we're disturbed by a situation. It begins to invoke a little disgust inside of me. It begins to kind of create this inner animosity. It doesn't sit well. I don't feel comfortable with it. It doesn't move me to anything, but it just kind of sits there and makes me feel a little disturbed. The last one is I think we replace it with concern. Oh man, I hope that changes. I would really like it if that wasn't the situation. I'd really like it if this was fixed. I would really like it if I didn't keep on seeing these bombings on the news. That would there's this concern. We really do care. It's just not enough to move us. I want to go back and revisit verse 4 in light of this. What brokenness is not, and then what brokenness really is. I sat down and wept and mourned for days. So I'm going to ask you to reflect right now. What things actually begin to hurt your heart a little bit? Is it that there's kids all over the world without moms and dads? That's what moves your heart. That's what hurts your heart. Is it that there's extreme poverty all over the world? That's what moves your heart. Is it that there's abusive parents and abusive people in the world, and so that's what moves your heart? Is it that people are lost and don't know Jesus, and that's what moves your heart? And if that's the case, then just don't move past it. Sit in it. Sit in it. Don't move past it. I love that he brings this up. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. Don't move past it. It's way too easy to want to move past it. Don't find the things that take your mind off of it either. I'm amazed. I'm really good at finding anything that can take my mind off of what I actually need to think about. Radio in the car, phoning a friend, jumping on, texting somebody, getting on Facebook, anything that can move my mind and replace my mind for anything that I actually need to be thinking about. So I'm going to say, what's it look like? He could have gone, man, I hate hearing what happened to those walls. I hate hearing what's happening to those people, but I got to go get the best wine again. It's my job. I got to go do my job. Instead, he sat in it. He sat in it for how long? Days. For days. But this is something that's like right in his backyard, right? Like he goes out and sees it. No, it's 800 miles away. I'm going to keep pushing that because I think it's very important. This week, I drove down to Houston, all around Houston, all the way back, and I only drove 700 miles. I'm sitting there thinking, it was even further, like way far away. 800 miles in a non-media, non-tech world. I want to keep on pressing that in because it moved him to do something about it. The second thing, not only did he sit down and weep and mourn for days, he continued fasting and praying. He continued fasting and praying. So I think this is important. I'm going to keep doing this. So what did he not do? He didn't start by seeing who else was angry about it, right? That's horrible. That makes you mad, right? Right? Who else is with me? We got to get a tribe together. Come on. Who else is with me? We all got to get mad. We got to start a change.org thing. That's what's going to make this whole thing go away. So we all got to get involved in it. We all got to get a part of it. I can't be mad alone. I need friends to be mad with me or it's not worth being mad at. I love that he didn't start by seeing who else. The second thing, and I just said this, he didn't start by rallying people, right? He didn't start going around to the king going, hey, you should be mad at this. You should be mad at this. This is bad. Think about what's happening to the people. They have no protection. He didn't start, this small thing. He just sat in it by himself. That's huge. I know I'm quick to go, man, that made me mad. I should post on Facebook and see who else would be mad with me. That'll change the world. Third thing, he didn't get to work immediately. He slowed himself down. Now, as go-getter, as men that want to go make a change, make something happen, it's like, oh, we heard it, let's go do it. And he said, no, that's not where we start. It's not where we start. We have things to take care of. If we actually want to make a change, we've got to make a plan. We've got to get the right people involved. We've got to get the right things happening. I don't just go get involved. You didn't hear him hear the story and go, that's horrible, and start walking. We're going. It's 800 miles. I know the way. Fourth, he didn't say, man, it's tough to hear. Would you let them know I'm praying for them? That would have been my quick response. Hey, when are you headed back? Let them know I'm praying for them. That sounds tough. Sounds like a bad situation. That's my normal thing, right? Somebody comes up to me and tells me something really horrific. I'm like, oh, man. Hey, bud, I'm praying for you today. I'm even praying for you right now. And if I really care, I might even text the prayer. but that's if they're really deeply hurting. But it's amazing how quickly I do all those other things rather than actually make a difference, make a change. So what did he do? He pressed harder into the brokenness. He pressed harder into it. He didn't just let it sit out there. He pressed harder into it. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. And I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. He sat and he pressed into the pain for three things. For clarity, he really needed to know what battle is he fighting. He really needed to know what's happening. He really needed to know what's going on. The second thing is he pressed into the pain for certainty, that he was the one called to do it, that he was the one called to be a part of it, that he was the one, and what is the plan, and you see this all the way through. Michael talked about this last week. See all the way through where he began to pray and then began to ask the king for what he needed. He really pressed into it. And then he pressed harder into the brokenness. He pressed into the pain for the action that he was supposed to do. He didn't just let it stay at, man, I'm angry about this. Man, I'm broken by this. Man, I'm saddened by this. He pressed into, what change do I need to do? He pressed harder into the brokenness for clarity, for certainty, and for actions. So I think there's two people in the room right now. Two types of people in the room. One of them is that you have something that's breaking your heart. I mean, you have it. You're feeling it. You're hurting it. It's like even sitting here, you're like, yes, I need to do something. Sitting here actually hurts more because I'm not moving. But I'll say, I think a vast majority of the people aren't broken for anything. I'm just going to be honest with you. And this is why, is because I spend my 40 hours a week, whatever that looks like, Monday through Friday, going around. And my job is to train and consult and to help pastors and leaders begin to have a desire and a dream for their city to look more like heaven and less like hell, and for people to run after lost people and see people come to know Christ and tangibly change their cities. Like that's what I do. And so I go and I talk with pastors, and I actually had a meeting just this week. I was sitting down in an office with a megachurch pastor, and I say this because he goes, Caleb, we hear the movements that you talk about all over the world. We've read the books. We know that the gospel's taking shape all over the world, and yet we see none of it in the U.S. Why? And I said, that's honestly what me and my team are trying to figure out. And I said, there's a lot of different reasons, but I think it comes down to one primary reason. And it's that Christians in America don't love lost people. And I can't say that enough, that I just don't think we do. I don't a lot of times. I don't care about their eternal salvation. I don't care about where they're headed. I wish I did, and every now and then I get a little bit moved towards it. But as an ongoing, pleading, CNN status, breaking news, neighbor moved in, headed to hell if you don't do something, I go, man, we're out of hamburger meat. I got to go to the store. Like, it doesn't stay. I think of the next thing that I have to do. I don't sit and dwell in it and make a plan and plead. My kids don't know that I want to pray and go after lost people. They know Daddy has a job that kind of does stuff where he maybe tries to make people move and love Jesus, but he doesn't know that I'm pleading and praying and my kids are in on the vision. Because I quickly move past the facts, right? I quickly move past the facts. So what do we do? I want to talk to the people in the room, and I'm one of these, so I'm not moving past this, about what do we do when we're not broken for anything? Or the things that we're broken for, if we really got down to it, wouldn't change anything. And the first one is that I'm going to plead with you to don't move past the facts quickly. Don't hear the facts and move on. Listen for the story. Listen for the story. Talked about headlines in a YouTube video, right? Just this week, I was going through, clicked on Facebook, and I saw, man robbed store. So I watched the video, and they're like, 36-year-old man, robbed store, did it, and just, I mean, they paint him like the worst. And I found myself, I'm like, why do people steal? Why do people, and I got angry, and I got mad, and then I started clicking a little bit more, and there was one that said, look, read the whole story, right? Like all these airlines that we're not supposed to fly anymore because they do horrendous things, but you don't click and watch the whole story. So I clicked and read the whole story, and what you realize is this guy has been trying to work for months, trying to get any job he can. His wife dies, and he takes on his 4 kids all by himself. And so he's trying to take care of 2 sick kids, and so the only way he could even think to feed his kids was to go in and take something. So I'm not justifying stealing, don't hear that. But what's the story? What's the story of the brokenness that's going on? It's not just that we have thieves everywhere. It's that, man, there's brokenness. Our cities are broken. Nehemiah 1:3, I said this earlier. And they said to me, because he asked for more of the story, right? He didn't just hear little facts. He asked for more of the story. The end of verse 2, and I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. Verse 3, and they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire. I would have gone, man, it broke down, that stinks. Okay, let's move on. And what you start getting into is, now, there is no protection for them anymore. Anybody can ransack them anymore. Try living in your house and all of a sudden you're just go to bed tonight and not lock your doors and see how comfortable you feel. Just try it. Go into the grocery store and don't go boop, boop to your car and see how well you stick inside that store for a little bit. Here's what he's saying. He's like, our believers can be ransacked by whatever people group. The Babylonians can destroy them, can come in. He began to think about the women, the children, and everything that can happen to these people, and his heart began to move. He didn't stop at the facts of, oh my gosh, the walls fell down. That sounds bad. He began to think about the heart, the souls, the lives that were impacted by it. That's what moved him to tears, not a little caption of walls of the city are destroyed. What happens to that? What happens to the lives and the families and the people? He looked for the story. He didn't just move past quick facts. The second thing, what do we do when we're not broken? We press into our soul how the world should be. I think I've just accepted how the world is, right? I've just accepted that there's going to be break-ins. When we were going to buy our house and we were looking at where we were going to live, what was the first? I didn't think about this, right? But what does my wife do? She goes on and looks at kind of the sexual report thing of our neighborhood. I'm like, they have that? I mean, like I'm learning this. I just moved together. This is just the world. It's just how it is. I don't think about how it should be, because if I think about how it should be, it'll actually change my heart to want to get involved in it. But if I just accept how it is, I don't know to get involved. That's what I love in Nehemiah 1:8-9. So in his prayer to God, he says this, remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the people. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen to make my name dwell there. He begins to plead with God. Remember how you said it should be. Remember how you said. And so this is what it looks like to preach the gospel to yourself. What would it look like if our neighborhood was completely transformed by the gospel? If I think deeply enough, instead of just going, well, this is just the world we live in. I mean, I lock my doors. I hear about a crime. I hear about something horrendous. The news is going to flash something bad. I'm going to get another Amber Alert, and I can just, click off of it. Instead of, no, it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. I'm so numb to most of the things in the world that I can't be broken for anything. It shouldn't be like that. The third thing, I'm going to plead with you to move. So there's no scripture with this. This is just a Caleb note. So if you don't think it's good, then Jesus didn't say it. The third one, move outside our bubble. Go have conversations with people you might disagree with. Go have conversations that make you feel awkward. Hear other people's story. Hear other sides of the fence. So one of the things that really stretched me when over the last, few years, all of the racial inequality, all the racial issues began to really take shape. I mean, clearly you can see I'm a white guy who lives in a really white world for the most part. And my assistant is a 45-year-old black lady, and we began to have great conversations where she was helping me see things that I was blind to. She was helping move me into caring about things that I never cared about, not because I didn't care about it, because I didn't know about it. I wasn't racist, I was ignorant, I was stupid. And so I have to have, what's it look like to have conversations that are going to make you feel uneasy? Move out of your bubble, move out of your situation, get off whatever little road you're in, your group you're in, and go have conversations that are going to push you into a world you've never even imagined. It will break you quicker than you could ever imagine. The fourth thing, lean in to others because brokenness is contagious. I'm going to go back to Ezra 10:1. Told you they're greatly connected. Ezra 10:1. While Ezra prayed and made confession, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God, a very great assembly of men, women, and children gathered to him out of Israel, for the people wept bitterly. Brokenness is contagious. Brokenness, when you're around other people, it begins to lead you to care about something deeper than what you ever have before. We can group think better than anybody, right? We get around each other and we can kind of tell each other everything's great. We can kind of tell each other what are the bad things in the world. We can kind of tell each other and whisper in each other's ear. But if we group think with people that are broken, it moves us to do something about it. The fifth one, what do we do when we're not broken? The fifth one is speak up. Nehemiah 2:1-3. In Nehemiah 2:1-3, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, I took up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been sad in his presence. And the king said to me, why is your face sad, seeing you are not sick? This is nothing but sadness of the heart. He has an option here, right? He has an option to go, I was just thinking about some stuff. Some things were in my head, and I was kind of worried about a few things. It's nothing. I was thinking a little bit about that wall. That's kind of crazy. No, he speaks up, and he says, then I was very much afraid. I love that, right? Who's there? Who's there? Who feels the injustice, who feels the need, who feels like you should step up, who feels like you should go talk to your neighbor, who feels like you should actually make a difference inside the poverty in your city, inside the injustice in your city, who feels like you should step up to maybe the battered woman down the street, that you need to talk to whoever it is, that you need to get involved, but you're this. Then I was very much afraid. Verse 3, I said to the king, so he was afraid and he embraced it and he pushed in. Let the king live forever. Why should not my face be sad when the city, the place of my father's graves, lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? So not only does he feel it, he speaks up into it. He voices there's a problem. If we don't get started on it, it's just going to get worse. Then the sixth thing, do something. Do something. Charles Spurgeon has a huge quote about do something. He's like, while churches sit in groups and sit in different committees and talk about things to do, let's do something. Right? Nehemiah 2:5-8. In Nehemiah 2, 5-8, he says, "And I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's graves, that I may rebuild it." Who does he ask to send? He's a king. He's got a lot of people, right? I'm sure he has some great wall builders. I mean, I'd be like, hey, let's figure out who can build the best wall. Go find the wall builders out there. Let's get those guys after. He goes, send me. I don't know what anybody else is good at. Send me. Because that broke me. It didn't break all the other people. Send me to do it. I love that it breaks him. He cried. He has a job too, right? Now the king can have bad wine. I mean, there's a lot at risk. And he steps out and he moves forward and he says, send me to Judah, to the city of my father's graves, that I may rebuild it. And the king said to me, the queen sitting beside him, how long will you be gone, and when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me when I had given him a time. I love that he pleads and he says, send me. He does something about the injustice that he heard about. He does something. And this isn't like, again, let's put all this in perspective. He doesn't hear about it going, oh my gosh, I got to go now. He hears about it. He sits. He prays. He weeps. He just slows himself down for days and then goes to the king. The king asks him and he speaks up. He was so driven to make some change. The king saw him sad. How huge is that? That you walk around and people are like, what's wrong? Like, I can't get over this fact. It's been days and I can't get over it. It's been days and I'm still physically, visibly shattered by this. That's a massive change. I told you earlier that just the truth of what it looks like to begin to see and to begin to look into and to begin to kind of try to rationale and figure out what it looks like to reach our city and the brokenness and the lostness and people that don't know who Jesus is. And I told you that I spent a lot of time, even around DFW, talking with pastors and leaders and teams and what's it look like to actually win the world. Because here's the thing. I drive around. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to raise your, who feels like there's a lot of churches here in DFW, right? I passed 14.9 million on the way here. I rounded. I quit counting a little bit. And then, I mean, it's just, but here's the fact. So there's 3,000 churches in DFW. There's 8 million people in DFW. And on a Sunday morning, less than 18% are actually in church. If every church was maxed out for their full capacity, and even you doubled the amount of services they have, we still can only seat like 20% of our population. People are lost all over our city. And if I think a lot about what that actually means, again, I'm a Christian, so I hear, oh, they're lost, that stinks. Man, I got a lot of hope in Jesus, and that must be tough for them. They must be dumb. I mean, like, that's really what goes on in my mind. Like, I've heard the gospel, I believe in who Jesus is, they're just dumb. I mean, or they haven't been told well. Instead of what's it look like to get past the facts and those numbers and start really sitting in and start thinking that, do the math on some of those numbers, and like 6.5 million, 7 million people in our city don't know Jesus, and in less than 40 to 80 years are headed to an eternal hell. Like, that starts breaking me. But I'm going to be honest. So I have lunch plans, and so it'll break me for about 23 more minutes. Just being completely honest. And then I got to figure out if I'm having chicken or beef. And so it won't move me to do anything. I'll move past this. I'm not going, honey, we're not eating. I'm going home, and I have to weep, and I have to cry, and I have to sit, and I have to just to figure this out, and I have to plead for God to change my country, and I have to plead for God to change my city. It doesn't happen like that. So what do we do? What how do we change? How do we make our country, how do we make our cities look more like heaven and less like hell? We have more Nehemiahs who sit close to the king, who sit close to the king and have conversations with the king. And I remember one of the times I was in an interview for a job. You can tell this wasn't a secular job because they asked me in the interview, of all the questions, like, hey, tell me a time that you didn't get along with a boss. Hey, tell me the time you really succeeded. Hey, what are you weak at? All of those questions. Then they asked me, when's the last time the gospel brought you to tears? When's the last time the truth of the gospel actually shattered you enough to where you broke down and began to cry? And I was like, right now? But it was like, what's it take to get the job? But in that whole thing, it really moved me to realize that that's where this starts, is that the gospel, what Jesus has done for me, actually breaks me to want to do it for other people. If I think I've been smart enough, or I deserve it enough, or I figured it out, like I figured the gospel equation out, and so that's why I'm saved, then I'm quickly moving on, right? And that other people can't figure it out. And there's enough churches, and if they really loved God, they would just move into it, rather than that there's brokenness and separation and animosity and anguish between God and man, and that God's calling me to move in and make the change. So I think it starts with allowing the gospel to bring you to tears, the gospel shattering and breaking you. There's a song that we used to sing, 3 or 4 years ago, that says, break my heart for what breaks yours. I don't think most of us actually want to sing that. If God did it, we'd be like, why? That hurt. Stop. Instead of moving us to actually do something.